There's a new conservation organisation on the block called WeWild Africa. Derek Milburn, director of WeWild Africa, joins us now to tell us a bit more about this NGO.
Richie, thank you very much for the opportunity, and good day to your viewers and listeners. WeWild Africa, we've been going since 2019. We are based in Cape Town, South Africa, but we operate right through Africa. Our founding members are it's myself and well-known conservationist Damien Aspinall, Amos Courage, and Tansy Aspinall from the UK. But we are surrounded by a very unique group of people that exercise conservation on a daily basis. So it's very much a team effort. It's all about collaboration, about partnership, and that's really what WeWild Africa is about. It's really just how big can we grow it with the networks that we have available and working with other agencies to really get the job done. At the end of the day, it's about the animal and the conservation space we're dealing with that is always coming first. And that's the really pull factor in terms of all of our decision making. And yeah, as long as we keep that as our front and center, we can't go wrong. So as an agency, we've now decided to really launch. I think we've been the best kept secret in conservation. And we've just decided that this year we really want to step it up a bit and broadcast a bit more in terms of what projects are being done so people can be aware of it. And at the end of the day, that people know that there's some way to go when animals are in need. And, there's a good chance that they could be shot or die, that they know that there's a phone number to phone or an email to email, and we can respond.
And how are you funded?
So WeWild Africa, we are a subsidiary of the Aspinall Foundation in the United Kingdom. So the Aspinall Foundation has been going for 40 years now. And we funded very much from the UK in terms of donors. And we are quite well in terms of sustainable funding, in terms of our overheads are funded by the Aspinall Foundation in the UK. So in terms of donor funding that we get, we can categorically state that 100% of the funds that we get in from donors for any project goes directly to the project. We don't take any project management fees off those funds. And we can honestly say that if somebody gives us 10,000 Rand, 10,000 Rand is going to the animals. And that's what we like to do. We're a very small team in terms of overheads. So our funding goes a long way. We try to keep the overheads low and the impact big. So that's why we work with a network of people and collaborators all across Africa so that we can pull on those resources as and when we need them. And then obviously, from the smallest donor to the largest donor, we appreciate every single cent, because these operations are definitely not cheap. What we do is not cheap. And we pride ourselves on the fact that we can respond within 24 hours if we get a call, whether it's a pangolin or an elephant, we've got to be there, which means we've got to pull on funding immediately. And that's often the challenge with a lot of the NGOs. And that's what differentiates us, is that we build up a fund and we keep that fund purely for emergencies. So it's a hybrid funding model where we get funds from the UK. We've also got funders coming in from America now. And then local South Africans as well that just come in and assist. So we often get people that will support a specific project. For example, if we have to go dehorn rhino somewhere, we might get a corporate to say, we'll dehorn 10 rhino, and then they join us on the operation. So it's also interactive funding as well that we work with.
Why does Africa need another conservation NGO?
So it is a very good question. And if you look at the number of NGOs in South Africa right now that really focus on rhino conservation, or we'll call it Southern Africa to be specific, and that's not just NGOs based in South Africa, but around the world. There's probably about 500 NGOs that focus on rhino conservation. The issue with a lot of the NGOs is that the funds don't actually go to the ground level where the animals are, where the impact needs to happen. So although the funding is coming into these NGOs, a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, there's some NGOs that are doing really good work. So often that the funding really gets absorbed by operational costs, overheads, and it never actually makes it to the ground. And also how we differentiate ourselves is that we do get things done as of immediately. If we get a call about an elephant that's broken out of a reserve, we respond immediately. We don't have red tape that we need to go through. Our board is very dynamic. We can make decisions on the spot. I've obviously got a mandate and a threshold to go up to in terms of funding that I can sign off at any given day. We've got a very good network and people enjoy working with us and we enjoy working with them. So that's what I think makes us unique. And South Africa needed an NGO that really is the end of the line NGO whereas many other NGOs, yes, they're doing good work, but it's not necessarily they can turn around projects so quickly. So our objective is that, and also our NGO doesn't just focus on one aspect on conservation, and that's what really makes us quite unique in the fact that we look at three things. Number one is emergency interventions, whether it's a squirrel to elephant, we provide emergency interventions. Number two, we rewild captive animals. So we take animals from captivity wherever possible and put them back into the wild. We probably on the forefront of rewilding cheetahs. We brought cheetahs in from zoos in Canada, from zoos in Australia, from zoos in the UK, put them back into the wild in South Africa. We've done it with crocodiles, we've done it, I mean, the list goes on. And then also we do landscape restoration. So we, in the process of signing agreements with government to actually assist them managing conservation areas, because without conservation areas, we can't go anywhere with these animals. So many NGOs will focus on either of those aspects, where we're focusing on all three, which I think, yeah, we just like to think it'd be making an impact where some NGOs might not be, and it's about filling gaps where it's needed.
What will be your specific focus in Africa?
So in Africa, like I mentioned, there's three core principles: rewilding, emergency intervention, and restoration. At the moment, our footprint has really been Southern Africa. We've also got projects with the Aspinall Foundation in Congo and Gabon, where we're releasing animals from captivity into the wild. But it's about making real, tangible impacts. We're also moving into West Africa now. We've got quite big projects happening in the Gambia. And then also in Kenya, we've got projects in Kenya. So one of our most ambitious projects at this stage is to bring a group of elephants back from the United Kingdom to release them in Kenya. So we're working with the Kenyan authorities. We've got 13 elephants standing at Howlett's Wild Animal Park in the UK. And we're going to put them on 2 Boeing 747s and fly them to Kenya to release them in Kenya. So our expansion plans are quite significant for this year. So yeah, we've got big plans for Africa, but our footprint so far has been Southern Africa with a bit of projects happening here and there. We've also, with the Aspinall Foundation, been releasing animals from captivity for the last 40 years. So the Aspinall Foundation is the biggest breeders of black rhino outside of Africa. So we also want to release rhinos back into Africa. We've released 12 already, and we've got 3 more standing in the UK we're going to release. Yeah, so it's really providing tangible solutions to species and ecosystems.
Where do you get the necessary trained personnel from?
Yeah, so it does. That is a key issue in what makes these projects tick. You know, you can have all the money in the world to do what you want to do, but without the right people on the ground that understand these things and the right government support, you know, it often makes it almost impossible. So over the years, we've developed a very good network of people. We work with wonderful organizations, you know, Conservation Solutions, Hope for Wildlife Helicopter Services, Ezendelo KZN Wildlife, Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency. I mean, like, the list goes on and on and on. And there's very special people within those organizations that really make an impact. And you know, there's only certain helicopter pilots that can capture a herd of elephants, and we know who those guys are, and that's basically the partnerships that we build. So our strength is in our ability to collaborate with other NGOs and other organizations. So wherever we operate, we have a network. So for example, and this is now two incidents that are happening now as we speak. When I say as we speak, it happened in this month. So there's a property in Hoedspruit where there's an issue with rhino poaching at the moment, and we're working with the people there on an ongoing basis. We're on a WhatsApp group. As soon as the rhinos, if there's a shot heard, we facilitate helicopter support, veterinary support. We've removed 3 bullets out of rhinos in the last month. So we've got a team there that we work with, and we say, listen, we're willing to support, let's go, get the helicopter, get the vet and go. But again, it's specialist people that we work with. And then at the same time, we've got elephants breaking out of Dumu that come in from Mozambique. Again, we've got a helicopter support system there, with rangers on the ground with Ezendelo, 3 organizations getting together, providing a solution. Whereas some NGOs are not willing to play the game. There's been a few occasions, especially in December, where elephants were shot because NGOs weren't willing to give information. You know, so a lot of the time it's political in the conservation space. So we pride ourselves in ego-free collaboration.
Could you tell us about your recent vulture relocation?
So WeWild Africa work in collaboration with Vulpro, which is a specialist vulture rescue and rehabilitation organization. They're probably one of the biggest in Africa, if not the biggest in the world, actually. In terms of vulture rescue and relocation, we worked with DHL, which were a transport provider and service provider, and then Shamori Private Game Reserve and a few volunteers in the world's largest vulture translocation. So we moved 163 vultures on the 23rd of January to Shamori Private Game Reserve from Vultures facilities in Addo Dam. So the purpose of the translocation was to move these vultures from Vulpro, and there was a few reasons for that. The first was that around the Addo Dam area, there's obviously a lot of development, a lot of human encroachment onto the areas, and the safety of the vultures were being questioned. So the organization then decided to manage the risk and actually move some of the vultures out. But at the same time, the vulture population in the Eastern Cape needs supplementation. So a lot of the vultures that we moved would never be able to fly again simply because they were victims of electric cables, affluent electric cables, and now the wings are broken, but they can still breed. But there were some fledglings that we are going to be releasing at Shamori. So the intention is this is the first phase of a few phases where we will be moving different vultures through to Shamori. But we started with whiteback and Cape vultures now. So once these vultures breed, the fledglings will either be released in the Eastern Cape or they'll be moved to other areas in the country that require vultures. So when I said it was the largest translocation ever undertaken, we had 50 people involved in just the loading and the crating of the vultures. So from catching the vultures to putting them onto the trucks took us 2 hours, which was like record breaking basically. The trucks then drove 18 hours to get from Vulpro to Shamori Private Game Reserve. It was about 1,000 kilometers, and then they successfully were put into the facilities that Shamori developed on the reserve. And what this means for vulture conservation is that we've really got a very secure population now in Shamori, but we've also got a secure population at Vulpro because the numbers are smaller, a bit easier to protect. And hopefully this is going to make a massive difference to the vulture conservation activities in the country.
Tell us about the work that you've done with elephants on the continent.
So elephants is probably one of the species that I enjoy working with the most, just simply because of the dynamics associated with them and just the sheer scale of the operations that we implement. I've personally been involved in the capture of about 300 elephants to date. And the organization itself has done a huge amount of work in terms of capture, rescue, removing snares, collaring elephants. Within SADC, elephants is a big topic at the moment. Everybody says there's too many elephants in the region, and what are we going to do? And culling is basically across the horizon, and there's a lot of doom and gloom around elephants. So we try to provide solutions wherever we possibly can. And yes, at the moment, we can almost see it as filling gaps and putting plasters on the problem. But the reality is that SADC needs a bigger plan in terms of how we're going to manage our elephant populations and potentially moving them further north, where elephants are needed. So the funny thing is in South Africa and Southern Africa, the elephant numbers are exploding. But beyond that, people or countries need elephants because they were completely obliterated by civil war, poaching, whatever it might be. So it's a very interesting dynamic where in the southern part of the continent, you've got masses of elephants, and then you've got to somehow try to get these elephants there, which is the challenge, because you can only move elephants about 55 hours in a truck. So how do you get elephants from here further north? So, that's the question we don't ask ourselves. But as an organization, we've moved loads of elephants from different reserves to different reserves. Normally where there's too many elephants in one reserve, or it's considered to be too many elephants in one reserve, to a place which needs elephants. So this year we worked specifically with Babanango Game Reserve. They needed elephants. So we moved from Addo, which was the first time elephants have ever been moved out of Addo, of family groups. So we took 2 family groups out of Addo, which did 2 things. Number one is it obviously reduced the population. But secondly, it proved that elephant families could be caught in Addo. Because that bush is so thick, everybody said there's no way we're going to do it. It was extremely difficult, but we got it right. So that's one of the key things we do. We try and really break boundaries when it comes to elephant management and that. And then also we might move elephants for a very specific reason. For example, Tembe Elephant Park in northern KZN, they're very well known for their long tusks. So there's one of the last population of tuskers in the world occur in Tembe. And interestingly, it's between Addo and Tembe Elephant Park, those are the only parks that have original elephants that weren't introduced there. in the country. So it's an amazing population of elephants. So what we're doing is we're moving every year. We take elephants from Tembe that show potential in terms of tusks. So we take the younger bulls because there's too many young bulls. So we take the young bulls and plant them in other reserves to infuse their valuable genetics into those populations. So, we're strategic in that way as well. And then often we're collaring elephants that are breaking out of reserves. We, like now with Ndumu Game Reserve, we're working with Ezenvelo to push elephants back into Ndumu before they get shot. So we provide tangible solutions, and government know they can phone us when they need help. And that's important. And private industry knows that. We're constantly chasing elephants off the R36 at Hoedspruit back into the Greater Kruger. Like, the list goes on and on and on.
And are there any other projects that you're willing to share with us?
Yes. So we are about to sign a very interesting agreement with the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency, basically for the co-management of Loskop Dam Nature Reserve. So up in Africa, you see lots of NGOs partnering with governments to take on reserves and parks because they just can't afford it anymore. But South Africa hasn't really got there yet. So you'll see that in the provincial reserves, there's a massive need for investment, resource management, infrastructure upgrades, but there haven't really been a framework to allow that investment to happen. So what we've done is we've worked with the CEO of MTPA, Mr. Bilakazi, and his team to draft and really formulate this agreement that could be used for other reserves in the country. So we're planning on signing a 25-year contract to partner with MTPA on the further management, improvement, and expansion of Loskop. So it's 23,000 hectares. We're trying to grow that to about 100,000 hectares, but just by incorporating surrounding farms and then bringing in tourism, other economic drivers for local communities. If we get this right, this could be the catalyst for other NGOs to do the same thing in other reserves, not only in Mpumalanga, but the rest of the country. So what we're trying to do is not just for one reserve. So anything that we do, we're trying to scale it and provide support to other properties. So we're documenting the whole process. Our agreement will be made available that people can learn from it and be used for other properties. So that's a huge project. At the moment, they've got a few rhino there in that, but we want to bring in the big five again, restock it with black rhino, lions, cheetah, big five. And just so we're going to spend probably about 25 million rand in the next 2 years, and then grow that to basically every year bring in more and more funding.
What is your relationship with the various governments within Africa like?
So governments in Africa are sometimes challenging, and it's just simply because of the resources that they have in many cases. But we work really well with governments. I mean, without government, we couldn't do what we do. For example, just to get a permit to move an animal, we have to work with government. So I must say that we collaborate well with government. Obviously, there are challenges always, decision making, lack of accountability, and it's just and constant changes within government. You're just about to get something done, and then the president changes. So you've been working on a deal for 3 years, and all of a sudden you've got to start over again. So it's like that in any industry. But what I can say is that there's a lot of committed people out there within government departments, and in many cases, South Africa says there's doom and gloom in terms of our governments, but I mean, we work with a lot of provincial counterparts. Ezenvelo KZN Wildlife, one of them, Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency, the Eastern Cape government. All three of those provinces have got exceptional people within them, and that therefore we have been allowed and able to implement really good projects there. You've got officials in there that'll go to the end of the world for you. I mean, with the Addo Elephant translocation, we desperately needed a permit, and there was a bit of a delay. And I had an official helping me at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday evening issuing a permit, and it's just, so it works both ways. You've got to support government. You can't say, well, you can't criticize the whole time. And that's what South Africans and NGOs in the government in this space need to realize, is that this is our global heritage, and we can't expect government just to keep forking out funding if we want this place to be successful. So what I can say is that we've got a great working relationship with many of the government agencies, especially in South Africa. The Zimbabwe government is amazing as well. We've got so much done in the Zimbabwe reserves. And it's just about how you deal with each other. It's a level of respect and also providing support where it's needed. Government departments know they can phone us and we will respond.
Thank you very much, Derek. That was Derek Milburn, and he is the director for WeWild Africa.